I correspond with Tirta in prison. We've sent 200 letters to each other. He may not like some of the things I say, and I certainly don't believe everything he says, but I do have some sympathy, all right? You know, he should be in prison, all right? That's the best place for him. I agree with that. But I know that if I was wearing that shoe, I could have been in a similar position as one of the murder conspirators. But if you ask who should have gone to prison, you know, I can't say that. There were about 12 people that are directly involved in the conspiracy, and there were other supporting players who assisted, but they may not have known about the murder plans. You know, they were supporting players.
Of the dozen or so devotees that were involved in this plot, how many have repented? How many feel bad that they were a part of this?
Well, I do know that Mahamantra in California, who assisted Krishna in hunting for Tirtha, he has expressed deep regret for his involvement in this. And so has Krishna who was Tirtha's sidekick in Los Angeles. He led Tirtha right to Salochan's hiding places and things like that. He was definitely involved. He has expressed regret. Janmashtami also has, in so many words, expressed his regret. And even Tirtha in prison, he sent me a letter one time, and when he told me that he regretted his actions that landed him in prison, and that none of those two devotees that he killed, Salochan or Chakradhari, deserved to die as they did.
Is he blaming others for that?
Tirtha has accepted the responsibility. He does blame others for preying upon his insecurities, in encouraging and pushing him to go ahead with this murder. He wasn't alone. There was no doubt about that. In fact, without the pushing of those conspirators, he wouldn't have been in California. In fact, after Salochan was discredited, he was arrested for a firearms violation in Moundsville. After he spent 2 months in the Marshall County Jail, and after he was released, Tirtha claims that he actually wanted to stop the hunt. He said, he's been discredited. Salochan, no one listens to him, you know. He spent time in jail. He was found guilty of this firearms violation. No one's listening to him. But Tirtha claims that Kaladri kept pushing him. No, we have to get rid of this guy. We have to get rid of him. He's going to California. If he's killed in California, then maybe the authorities will place the blame on Rameshwar instead of New Vrindavan and Bhaktipad.
How many are keeping totally silent about it?
To my knowledge, well, Kaladri, for one. I interviewed him some years ago, and I wanted to talk to him about the murder, and he just said, I don't want to talk about that.
How many deny?
Which is fine. You know, I respect him for that, not him wanting to talk about it. Better than Tapa Punj, who will talk about it, but he makes up stories to protect his conspirators.
So, how many are denying any involvement?
Just 2 to my knowledge, and that would be Rameshwar and Radhanath Swami. Of course, Kirtanananda denied everything also, but he's dead now. And Hayagriva and Randall Gorby, they died before the trial started. I don't want to see anyone else go to prison, but I would like to see a little honesty and transparency.
Something like what?
Well, I mean, I used to...
Like some devotees have suggested, some devotees are saying that any one of these 12 could have stopped the murder, but none of them stepped in to stop it. Shouldn't at least some of them say, I regret that I didn't stop this?
In a perfect world, yes, where everyone is truthful and honest and admit their sins, all right? But that's not the world we live in, all right?
I think there's still a chance.
Well, yes, of course, there's always a chance.
You know, the other day, 2-3 days ago, I said, I'm going to do what I've been doing since a teenager. especially if I feel that I need to know something, or I have some conflict and I need to get rid of that conflict. I go to a spiritual book and I open it. I found it is authoritative in some branches of spirituality. And sure enough, I have the answer there. So I felt that way the other day about your book. I said, I have to go over there and pick up this book, open it anywhere, and I have to read, and that's going to be very important. And I opened up to page 310 and 311. And it became clear to me that at the end, Sulochana Prabhu felt that he would not do a complete and successful service to Srila Prabhupada unless he died. And that he was okay to die. That was very courageous and extremely sincere.
I would agree with you. At some point, I mean, the whole campaign against Bhaktipad and the other gurus initially was to get back his wife and 2 sons. As he began reading Prabhupada's letters, that's a whole other story too. Back in those days, nobody could read Prabhupada's letters because they were kept locked up in secret in the BBD
How did they come
archive.
out?
Sulochana, after he left Nivardama, went to LA. He had a friend there who worked in the archives, and he paid him a donation, and his friend got him a microfiche set of the Prabhupada's letters. And Sulochana claims that he took these letters to Berkeley where he went to meet Parancha, and then Rameshwar found out and called him up and said, you have to return those letters or else you'll be dead meat on the hook. That Sulochana claims Rameshwar told him that. And of course he wasn't going to return these letters. And it was not for a few more years that these letters were published, finally. I think the Vaishnava Institute published a 5-volume, 6-volume set of Prabhupada's letters in 1987, a year after Sulochana was murdered. But he certainly was courageous, all right? After a year and a half of his campaign in which he attempted to expose the corruption in the society, and his imprisonment in the Marshall County Jail, and the release, and the negative reactions he was getting from all over the movement, he finally, and the encouragement of his friends who said, you've got to cool this, you're too fanatical. He agreed that, yes, I've spent enough time on this. It's time to just give up. If ISKCON doesn't want to be saved, I can't save ISKCON. And he found a new woman that he wanted to marry and settle down with and have a family. And he really had more or less given up his fight against the gurus. And that he told his closest friends in Berkeley and in Los Angeles and in the Three Rivers community. But Tirtha and Nuvrindavan and Rameshwar and they did not know this. They thought he was still going to kill the gurus.
Why did they have no? Do you think they would have stopped?
Probably not. Probably not, because by that time most of them had gotten into their heads that this was service to Krishna. This is killing for Krishna. Some devotees don't like the title because they feel that it's implicating Krishna in nefarious, heinous activities. All right?
I contacted you about that too.
Yes. But I did settle on that title, Killing for Krishna, for 2 reasons. One is that I wanted Krishna's name to be in the title. All right? Anyone who sees the name of Krishna, right?
Of course.
There is a benefit there. All right? And the second reason is that Sulochana believed that killing the gurus would be devotional service to Krishna, because he would be eliminating offenders, people who had blasphemers, who had so-called acharyas who had taken over ISKCON for their own aggrandizement. And yet also, Sulochana believed killing for Krishna was authorized. The New Vrindavan and California conspirators also believed that they were killing for Krishna too. And they had quotes from Shastra and from Prabhupada,
So
justifying their actions. I must also point out that Prabhupada approved of killing for Krishna, all right? Although he never authorized it in practice. In theory, Prabhupada approved of killing for Krishna. He talks about it many, many times, specifically about Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. You know, it depends on the culture you're living in, all right? Today, it's a very individualistic society. The individual is sacred. The human rights, the individual rights, all right? Thousands of years ago, when these scriptures were written, it was a different society. Completely different. They were slaves. Slavery was a normal accepted thing. There was the commoners, there was the upper class, the nobles, and a different set of rules applied to all of them, all right? So in those days, it was a very different mindset, all right? Today, that same idea does not work anymore because it's a different culture. We're in a different, and understand that ISKCON and New Vrindavan, they were trying to reawaken the ancient Vedic culture and establish it again in Kali Yuga, the degraded Iron Age, all right? At New Vrindavan, we had arranged marriages. We had children, 12, 13-year-olds, being married to men in their 20s or 30s because that was Vedic. We had men with 2, 3 more wives living at New Vrindavan because that was Vedic. That was the era. Polygamy was perfectly accepted until the modern age, you know, where corruption and irreligious ideas destroyed this Sanatan Dharma that we're trying to recreate here. When a concept which might be perfectly accepted by people thousands of years ago doesn't work in the contemporary age like this, as we see. And we, as devotees, we should understand that.
Do you think that Sudarshan Prabhu, in time, will be considered categorically superior to those that killed him, become more famous and more appreciated than them in time?
I refuse to speculate on things that may happen in the future. We don't know any of these things. I do know that Sulochana was an incredibly flawed individual. All right, he had some.
But how can you compare? I mean, his sincerity and courage.
That's true. You know, for some reason.
Don't you think that there is a chance that he'll be just as famous and as highly regarded as some of the gurus of ISKCON in time?
It could happen. And some of the gurus in ISKCON, we've seen them fall down, all right, and become dishonored like that. It's possible. You know, Sulochana was a brave and courageous devotee, and there's no doubt he loved Prabhupada. He loved reading Prabhupada's books. He did have his faults. There's no doubt about that. And he could be still alive if he wasn't so didn't make so many threats about killing the gurus. You know, it's possible, but
I think he was laughing about it in part, but you know, he was just like waving guns, he's laughing, but it scared people.
Yeah.
People thought that he was for real.
I think he was a little insecure, and he felt that this would give him courage. You know, waving his guns and threatening the gurus and things like that. But who knows what the future can bring? You know, he certainly deserves to be lauded for his courageous attempt to expose corruption in the Hare Krishna movement. And who can fault him for that? Because his initial assertions that the 11 zonal acharyas were pretenders has since been shown to be correct. You know, so his initial premise was correct. You know, that they had taken over the ISKCON movement, and that even a year after his death is when the temple presidents, the United States and Canada, united, and finally at the GBC meeting, knocked the gurus down a few notches, you know, to help eradicate this great fanaticism and the charismatic cults. And that one thing about New Vrindavan, that cult of Kirtanananda, you know, where one person we attribute divine powers and abilities to, all right, we were all fooled because he was nothing more than a conditioned soul just pretending. And he was a good pretender too, you know. And he's not the only guru in ISKCON that was a so-called acharya pretending like that. So we must be very careful about this cultish mentality. And it still occurs. And it was because of that, the blind fanatical following of the followers, whereas the Solochan was murdered. All right, they didn't stop to think. They just went ahead based on their feelings and their belief in this guru. So this could happen again, unless we're very careful to keep an eye out for circles in ISKCON that still operate on the charismatic
or
cult,
around ISKCON,
or around with the charismatic cult technique or dynamic, I should say.
So what do you think we should do so this does not happen again?
That's a big question. And I don't claim that I know the answer to that question. I am a very small person, all right? But from what I can tell, is that this whole murder, assassination, plot was put into motion and executed because of deranged devotion. We saw Kirtanananda Swami as Prabhupada's successor, the only pure devotee left in the planet after Prabhupada passed away. And if someone threatened violence to him, as Solochan did, threatened to blaspheme him by making up all sorts of nonsense stories about abuse and sexual molestation, that just as Srimad Bhagavatam says, the blasphemer's tongue should be cut out and then he should be killed. And this is because of fanaticism, deranged devotion, having a pretender in the position of guru. Guru is really only for the most advanced. And from what I can tell, the most advanced devotees are really the most humble, all right? And not just in speech and word, all right? But they're humble in that they are honest about their own past mistakes. And they don't try to cover up any bad things they might have done in the past, all right? That person is not humble, all right? That person is self-centered who does that. Vigilance is incredibly important.
So is this a campaign against the gurus of ISKCON?
Not at all. Yes, one of the gurus in ISKCON who was involved in the murder conspiracy has refused to admit it.
So you're a part admitting that this is a campaign against him?
It's not a campaign.
Or you just want the truth?
It's not.
Or you want people to be honest?
Right. I mean, it's not a campaign against anybody. I'm just telling a story of what really happened 32 years ago, all right? And just like a historian or a scientist, they examine the evidence and then they draw their conclusion. They don't make their conclusion and then disregard evidence which does not support their conclusion, all right? So I admired and respected this ISKCON guru for very many years, all right? But when push came to shove and he was accused of being a conspirator in the murder plot, and when he denied that, I really lost a great amount of respect, because if we can't be truthful, what is the use of our chanting Hare Krishna?
Devotees talk to each other, although they have different philosophical ideas. Some are Britics, some are not Britics, but they're talking with a lot of heart about this. Have you noticed that?
It is possible. I think the saga of Solochon transcend sectarian boundaries, and it grows to the essence of the disciple's love for his spiritual master and his attempt to protect his spiritual master's mission. I think that will certainly be appreciated by anyone, regardless of what their particular philosophy is, as far as the disciplic succession and initiations.
So do you feel that this event, coupled, let's say, with good communication, conflict resolution, etc., some of the tools that we can find today that we can utilize, utility is the principle, Srila Prabhupada said, a study of psychology, etc., do you think that this could form the foundation and basis? We may understand that we're not to kill each other or anybody else. Vaishnavism does not kill any living entity. So do you think that this has the potential, so we learn to talk to each other, leave each other alone, build our own Christian field, and not kill each other?
Of course, that's our hope. Certainly, we don't want to see violence. We have the differences, of course. All right, and the differences have to be acknowledged and perhaps even respected. All right, because we want to work together as much as possible to spread the glories of the Sankirtan movement. All right. If we're all fighting about issues that take us apart, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. For example, I personally don't like the Republican agenda. I like the liberal democratic agenda. But I have some friends who are devout Republicans, and we certainly disagree completely but we can work together on other things that you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is that,
Unity and diversity.
I mean, just because you think a person's an idiot because of their belief like that, doesn't mean that you have to kill them or harm them in any way.
That's happening right now. As we're doing this, we have some understanding. We have agreed on some limitations that we have as those that are organizing all of this and promoting all of this. And they have also contributing. They're also contributing. ISKCON, they're donating garlands for Solutions Memorial on the 22nd. We're going to have a memorial on the 22nd at 3 at Sherwood Hills Park, and then another one on Sunday at 3 p.m. And they're donating garlands for that. So it's all about communicating and coming to some agreement. And the agreement should be no violence.
Agreed.
No lies, no intimidation, no efforts to silence people, and of course no efforts to kill anybody.
Right. Certainly. Hopefully
we can do it.
Hopefully, yes. Achieve a new, maybe enlightened age of tolerance. I hope that we will see this as our hearts become more and more purified.
It will happen.
Yes.
In any case, how can devotees get your book?
They can, I have a web page. If you just do a Google search, put my name in, Henry Doktorski, and then the title of the book, Killing for Krishna. It should take you right to that page.
You can get the book for $20 delivered in USA, right?
Right.
And then in Kindle you can get it for under $10, I understand.
I think it's $9.99 in Kindle. You can also order from Amazon.com. Anyway, I hope that our listeners will be curious and want to read this and share the book. Share the book with all your friends. Really, one book can go in many hands.
You have done an incredible job. Every devotee, I feel, should read this book. Every devotee should read this book. And it will help our movement tremendously. So thank you so much for this book. And do you have anything else to say? Any final things?
All I can say is that if this book has value, and if it helps to cleanse our hearts and maybe cleanse ISKCON also. We can only thank Krishna, really, because he's directing
He's
the
doing
wanderings.
everything.
He's directing the wanderings of all the living entities. It was so many amazing coincidences that allowed this research to come together and the book to be published. And so we can give, as the J.S. Bach and many of the great Baroque composers would write on their score, Solo Deo Gloria, all glory to God.
Wonderful. So devotees of Krishna, no violence. No need of this violence. Krishna consciousness is not about violence. We have to unite on this. This could be the foundation and basis to do something extremely unique in the history of the world. Religions are killing each other within their own religions and sects. And we can change that and be the only ones that don't do that. Let's take up this opportunity. It will please Srila Prabhupada. It will please Lord Krishna. Let me give you a story. I talked to Madhvisa Prabhu, who passed away not long ago. The story went that he had stolen $120,000, $30,000 or $40,000 from Prabhupada. And I heard rumors about it. So I approached them personally. And because they were saying that the devotees wanted to kill him and stuff like that. So I talked to him personally. He said it was not over $100,000. It was like $70,000, $80,000. Okay, so tell me the story. The devotees wanted to kill you? And he said, yes, the devotees wanted to kill me. So what did you do? I hid. And they couldn't find me. So the devotees talked to Prabhupada. And they said to Prabhupada, we should kill him. And Prabhupada said, no, that would be Vaishnava Aparad. So Prabhupada, we should beat him up. No, that would be Vaishnava Aparad. Prabhupada, we can call the police and put him in jail. No, that would be Vaishnava Aparad. So what to do, Prabhupada? If you see him, have him call me. So Madhvisa called Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, my son, you have done so much service for me. I don't care about all of this. I simply want you to chant Hare Krishna and not leave the association of your God brothers. But Prabhupada, they're going to kill me. No, I'm going to give order that they welcome you at all the centers around the world and that you can lead the kirtan and give class just like before. This was Prabhupada's reaction. We have to do the same thing. I'll leave you with Prabhupada.